I had been asleep for about 40 minutes, the kind of deep, dreamless sleep you only get after a long week of exhaustion when the phone on the nightstand lit up like a flare gun. Nothing good ever comes from a phone call at 2 a.m. Never. I'm 63 years old. I spent 31 years as a family lawyer. My body still has the reflex to flinch at unexpected phone calls the way old soldiers duck when they hear a motorcycle backfire behind them. The name on the screen made my heart skip exactly one beat. Skyla. Welcome to Dad's real-life revenge. Grab a snack, get comfortable, and remember that the people in this story had every chance to be kind, they just chose the wrong path. Leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You're definitely going to like it here. It wasn't Anthony, and it wasn't his wife Natalie. It was my granddaughter, 8 years old, calling me from what I assumed was her bed in the house in Marietta, Georgia, a quiet suburb of Atlanta where the lawns are trimmed a little too perfectly and the smiles are a little too rehearsed, where everything looks fine until you look a little closer. I answered before the second ring could even sound. Skyla, sweetheart, what's wrong? The sound she made wasn't exactly crying. Not quite. It was the sound a child makes after crying for so long there are no tears left. Just shaky breaths like an old engine trying to turn over but never quite starting. Grandpa. She said my name like it was the only word left in her vocabulary. I was already sitting upright, reaching for my glasses, my brain running calculations, an old habit. 31 years of family law teaches you to do the math before your feet even touch the floor. Distance 6 hours by car, 45 minutes by plane. I'm here, I said. I'm right here. Tell me what happened. They left. I made her repeat it because I truly didn't believe what I had just heard. Who left, sweetheart? Dad, Mom, and Alex. Her voice caught on the last name, her brother, Anthony, and Natalie's biological son, 11 years old. The kid with their exact jawline and smile, and apparently their vacation plans too. They went to Florida, to Disney World. For a moment, I just sat there completely still. Say that again. They went to Disney World, she repeated, her voice getting smaller as if she were ashamed, like it was somehow her fault. And they didn't take me. They said I have school on Monday, so it wouldn't be convenient to bring me. But I'm a man who once cross-examined a county judge without blinking. I've argued before in appellate court with a 103-degree fever because my client needed me there. I've delivered news to parents that no parent should ever hear custody, lost parental rights, terminated children, gone for good, and I did it with steady hands and a measured voice because that's what the job required. But right now I was sitting on the edge of my bed in Decatur, 6 hours away from my granddaughter, pressing my fist against my mouth to stop myself from saying everything that was racing through my mind. You didn't do anything wrong, I said instead. Do you hear me? None of this is your fault. Then why, I don't know yet, sweetheart. But I'm going to find out. I had no idea that I'm going to find out would become the most important promise I would make in the next decade of my life. At 63, I never imagined I'd be making an emergency call before dawn, not for a VIP client, but for my own blood. I didn't know it then, but I'm going to find out would become the most important promise I would keep in the next decade of my life. I hung up with Skyla after telling her to lock the doors and pull the covers up to pretend she was asleep if she heard any noises outside. My chest felt tight, but my mind was strangely clear, the cold clarity of a hunter who has just discovered the first signs of a crime. I called Joseph Wright at 2:11 a.m. Joseph is 70, a retired Delta mechanic, and the only man I know who treats a midnight phone call like a perfectly normal social event. Stephen, he answered on the first ring, sounding inexplicably awake. I need you to watch my dog, I said, getting straight to the point. There was a brief pause before he asked. How long? I don't know. A few days. Maybe longer. Is this about your granddaughter? I hesitated for a moment. Yes. I'll be over in 10 minutes to get the key. That's Joseph. He never asks questions you don't want to answer. I've known him for 22 years, and that man has never once in his life been less curious about other people's business, except when it actually matters. Those are the friends worth keeping. I booked a flight right there on my phone while still wearing my pajamas. A 6:15 a.m. flight from Hartsfield-Jackson, landing in Atlanta at 7:02 a.m. Yes, I know it's such a short flight. It feels less like flying, and more like an extremely expensive bus ride that happens to serve pretzels. But I wasn't about to drive 6 hours at 2 in the morning. I'm 63, not 30. My back made that decision years ago. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I walked into my home office, opened the bottom left drawer of my desk and pulled out a small digital voice recorder. The kind I used to carry into every client meeting before everything moved to apps and cloud storage. It was small, discreet, about the size of a lighter. I told myself it was just habit, an old lawyer's instinct. Later I would find out whether that was actually true. I landed in Atlanta at 7:08 a.m. Thursday, 3 minutes late, because the pilot ran into unexpected headwinds, aviation's polite way of saying, we're not entirely sure why either. I had a carry-on suitcase, my briefcase, the recorder in my shirt pocket, and 31 years of family law experience, sitting in my chest like a stone. I rented a car from the Hertz counter, a blue Chevy Malibu that smelled overwhelmingly like pine air freshener. The kind of smell that makes you wonder what it's trying to cover up. It took me 22 minutes to drive to Marietta. The house on Whitmore Drive looked exactly the way I remembered it. Beige vinyl siding, a 2-car garage, flower beds that Natalie tended with the intensity of someone whose self-worth depended entirely on the approval of the homeowners association. And to be fair, that might actually have been the case. Skyla must have been watching from the window because the front door opened before I even made it up the porch steps. She was still wearing pink pajamas covered in tiny cartoon sloths. Her black curly hair, the kind that needs care, love, and 45 minutes with a good detangling comb, was a mess after a long night. Her eyes were swollen. She had been crying long before she called me. She didn't say a word. She just ran straight at me. I caught her at the bottom of the steps and held on tight. She wrapped her arms around my neck with the grip of someone who needed to make sure I was real. I felt her exhale against my shoulder, a long, shaky breath, as if she had been holding it in for hours. Maybe she had. I'm here, I said. Grandpa's here with you now. We stood there like that on the front walkway for a long moment. The neighborhood was quiet. A sprinkler was running 2 houses down. A man walking a beagle passed by and gave us a polite little nod. The kind of suburban acknowledgement that says, I see you, I respect your privacy, carry on. Eventually I pulled back and looked at her face. Have you eaten anything yet? She shook her head. Did you get any sleep at all? A little, she said, though it didn't sound convincing. All right. I picked up my bag with one hand and took hers with the other. Let's go inside. You can show me where everything is and I'll make you the worst scrambled eggs you've ever had. Because you know your grandpa can't cook. She almost smiled. Almost. The house told me a lot before Skyla said a single word. That was another old lawyer habit, read the room before you read the people. The living room had family photos lined neatly along the hallway wall, the kind of curated gallery meant to declare, look how happy we are. I moved slowly, taking everything in. Alex's school picture from last year grinning with Anthony's exact nose. Anthony and Natalie at what looked like the Grand Canyon Alex between them, all 3 of them laughing. Alex's Little League baseball trophy on the hallway shelf. Alex's finger painting actually framed on the wall by the bathroom. I counted 11 photos along that hallway. Want to guess how many had Skyla in them? 2. One was her first day of school picture, slightly off-center, as if it had been placed there as an afterthought. The other was a Christmas family photo where she stood on the far left edge of the frame, half a step behind everyone else, looking like she had accidentally wandered into someone else's family portrait. I stood there staring at that Christmas photo longer than necessary. Skyla came and stood beside me looking at it too. I don't like that picture, she said quietly. Why not? She shrugged. I look like I'm visiting them. 8 years old. 8 years old, and she already understood what I was only just beginning to document as evidence. I reached up and touched the recorder in my shirt pocket. Over scrambled eggs, which, as promised, were truly terrible, Skyla began to talk. I let her lead the story. Another old habit. Don't interrogate a witness, just open a door and step aside. When did they tell you they were leaving? I asked. Tuesday night after dinner, she said, pushing the eggs around her plate. Dad said it was a last-minute birthday trip for Alex. Alex's birthday isn't until I stopped myself. I knew exactly when Alex's birthday was. It was still 2 months away. I know, Skyla said without looking up. Then why didn't you say anything? Because the last time I talked about the camping trip, Mom got mad and said I was being selfish. And then Dad didn't talk to me for 3 days. If you've made it this far, do us a small favor, subscribe to the channel. A lot of people watch without ever doing that, and it costs you nothing, but it means everything to us. Truly thank you. Which camping trip? In September. They took Alex camping in Tennessee. They told me I had a sleepover that weekend, but it got canceled. Arya was busy. She said it casually, like it was just a fact of life, like the pain had been processed so many times it had worn smooth. So I stayed home with Mrs. Patterson next door. Arya Rodriguez. Skyla's best friend at school. I logged the name in my mind. I didn't know it yet, but September would become Exhibit A. I needed to get Skyla out of that house. The four walls filled with lopsided photo galleries, and the ghosts of every trip she hadn't been invited on, made the air feel suffocating. We stopped at a place called Rosie's Diner on Canton Road in downtown Marietta, the kind of diner that had existed since before the interstate was built, and refused to update its decor or its menu on principle. Skyla ordered a grilled cheese sandwich and a chocolate milkshake with the confidence of someone who had earned it. I ordered meatloaf. Because I'm 63, and I've accepted who I am. During lunch, I did something I had carefully avoided all morning. I started asking questions. Slowly. Gently. Framed like conversation instead of interrogation. But I'd be lying if I said the lawyer in me wasn't quietly taking a deposition beneath every bite of meatloaf. Tell me about the school play, I said. Your teacher sent me the program. You had a speaking role, right? Skyla's face shifted with something complicated. You saw it, miss. Peterson emailed me a copy. She said you did great. I had 7 lines, she said, with the quiet pride of someone who had memorized that number. I was the narrator. Were Anthony and Natalie there? That complicated expression returned. Dad came for a little while, she said carefully. He had to leave early because Alex had hockey practice. Mom stayed with Alex. I nodded slowly, keeping my voice even. And your birthday? March, right. You turned 8 this March. We had cake, she said simply. Just at home. Dad gave me a tablet. She paused, then added quietly. I heard them talking the night before. Mom said they should throw a party, but Dad said... She stopped again. You can tell me, sweetheart. She stared down at her milkshake. Dad said they had a big birthday for Alex at Great Wolf Lodge last year, and they can't have big parties every year. It's too expensive. She said the last part in a slightly different voice, the careful imitation children use when they repeat something an adult said, without realizing they're doing it. Alex's birthday is in October. Skyla's is in March. 5 months apart. 2 different financial quarters. 2 very different scales of celebration. And somehow the too expensive argument had landed entirely on the adopted child. Skyla, I said, setting down my fork. Can I ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth, even if you think it might get someone in trouble? Do you feel like you and Alex are treated the same in that house? A long silence. The rotating pie case hummed softly. Behind us, a couple, at the counter, debated whether they should order dessert. Sometimes, Skyla said. Then, more honestly. Not really. Can you tell me about another time that happened? Something different from what you've already told me. She thought carefully, the face of an old soul deciding which truth she could trust me with. Family pictures, she finally said. At Christmas we went to that place in the mall with the backdrops and the matching outfits. Mom picked red sweaters for her dad and Alex. She forgot to order one for me. She paused. She said she ordered it, but it didn't arrive in time. So, what happened in the pictures? I wore my school sweater. The blue one, she said calmly, almost methodically, like she'd told herself this story enough times to sand down the sharp edges. But it's okay. Arya said I looked the best because I stood out the most. A good friend. The kind who finds light in the darkest corners. Exhibit B. I discreetly touched the recorder in my shirt pocket. I had enough information now to begin outlining a petition in my head. We got back to the house around 5 in the afternoon. I had stopped at a CVS and let Skyla pick out anything she wanted: nail polish, gummy candy, and a word search puzzle book. She chose carefully with the restraint of a child who had been taught not to ask for too much. That tightened something in my chest. That kind of restraint is heartbreaking. While Skyla sat at the kitchen table working on her word search, I stepped out into the hallway. I stood in front of the photo display for a long moment, then took out my phone. I photographed every image, every frame, every caption. Then I counted again. 11 photos. I made notes about who appeared in each one. After that, I turned on the recorder and spoke quietly, just loud enough to be heard. Thursday, approximately 5 p.m. Whitmore Drive, Marietta, Georgia. Subject: photographic documentation of family images within the residence. 11 photographs displayed in the main hallway. The minor Skyla appears in 2 of them. In one photograph, the child is visually separated from the family unit. In the second photograph, the child is wearing clothing that does not match the rest of the family, indicating she was not originally included in the coordinated plan for the photograph. Both images are positioned in locations of lower visual prominence compared to the others. I turned the recorder off. Then I went back to the kitchen and sat across from Skyla. She looked up at me, her eyes tired but hopeful. "Grandpa, when they come back on Sunday, are you going to make me stay here?" She asked it calmly, like she had already prepared herself for the answer to be yes. "I'm not sure yet," I said honestly. "But I want you to know something. No matter what happens, no matter what I decide or what any adult in your life decides, you need to understand this. You are not an afterthought. You are not a burden. You are not someone's blue sweater in a Christmas photo." I kept my voice steady, the steady voice of a lawyer in court. "You are my only priority, Skyla. Do you understand me?" Her chin trembled once. "Yes," she whispered, and then she went back to her word search. If you've listened this far and want stories like this to keep being told, liking the video and subscribing to the channel helps more than you might think. 97% of people never do it, but it's what allows all of this content to exist. So truly, thank you. Anthony called back at 2 p.m. This time I answered. Dad, the relief in his voice was immediate. Then he asked cautiously, "How is she?" "She's fine. She's here, and she's safe." I paused for a moment, not thanks to anyone currently in Orlando. Silence fell over the line. "Dad, Anthony." I said his name the way I do in a courtroom when I want someone to understand that the conversation is no longer casual. "I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to answer honestly. When was the last time Skyla was included in a family trip?" A long pause, longer than it needed to be. The length of that silence said everything. "We took her." He stopped, then tried again. "Last summer we went." He stopped again. "Money's been tight this year, Dad." "You don't understand. The camping trip in September in Tennessee," I interrupted. "Alex went." Silence. "The Christmas photos," I continued. "She was wearing a blue sweater." More silence. "Her birthday was cake at home. Alex's birthday was Great Wolf Lodge." Now the silence was heavy. "Anthony, my son, the boy I once taught how to throw a baseball, was standing somewhere inside the Magic Kingdom trying to explain why his daughter wasn't there." "I'm not saying you're a bad person," I said, keeping my voice calm, sharp as a scalpel. "I'm asking you, when you look at the things I just listed, what do you see?" He didn't answer for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, smaller. "I don't know how it ended up like this." And that was the answer. Not a defense. Not an explanation. Just a man staring at his own reflection and unable to explain who the person looking back at him had become. "We'll talk on Sunday," I said. "All of us. In person." I hung up. I sat in his kitchen at his table drinking his coffee. Then I opened my laptop and began drafting the petition. Morning would bring a fight Anthony had never prepared to face. Anthony and Natalie walked through the front door at 4:17 p.m. Sunday, wearing Mickey ears, sunburned shoulders, and the fragile smiles of people who had spent 4 days pretending everything was fine. Skyla was sitting at the kitchen table doing a word search. She didn't even look up. That indifference hit Anthony harder than any criticism I could have said. "Hey, sweetheart," Anthony began, his voice shaky. "She hears you," I said from the doorway, "but whether she answers is her choice." Natalie's eyes snapped toward me, sharp as glass. "Stephen, we should talk privately." "We will," I agreed. "But first, Anthony, check your mailbox." He frowned, stepped outside, and came back holding a large manila envelope, the kind with the metal clasp, the kind that suggests you should probably sit down before reading it. "What is this?" That, I said calmly, is a petition for de facto custody of Skyla Hall filed Friday morning with the Cobb County Superior Court. I let that sentence sit in the room for exactly 2 seconds. "I've been fairly busy." Natalie's face went completely pale. "You can't do that." "I already did. 31 years in family law. I didn't forget everything, sweetheart." Anthony stood frozen. He opened the envelope slowly, The way people open things they already know will change their lives. His eyes moved across the first page. Then he sank down onto the hallway floor. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. And certain. Dad. His voice thickened. Dad. I have recordings, I said quietly. I have photographs. I have dates, Anthony. Every trip. Every birthday. Every school play with one empty seat where two parents should have been. I have a pattern so clear I could present it to any judge in Georgia and win before lunch. Natalie started crying. I handed her a tissue because I'm not a monster. I'm not doing this to destroy you, I said. I'm doing it because that little girl asked me why at 2 a.m, and nobody in this house had a decent answer. Anthony looked up, his eyes red. I know, he said, his voice barely audible. I know, Dad. Are you going to fight it? The longest silence of my life followed, longer than any moment I had ever spent waiting for a verdict. He slowly shook his head. That was it. The hearing took place 14 days later at the Cobb County Superior Court, presided over by Judge Patricia Wynn, a woman with absolutely no tolerance for nonsense and an excellent instinct when it came to children. Anthony appeared without a lawyer. He testified for 11 minutes. Calmly. Without drama. He said he loved his daughter, but he had failed her in ways he was still trying to understand. He admitted his father could give her something he hadn't been able to. Consistency. Priority. And a seat in the front row. Judge Wynn granted de facto custody to me, Stephen Collins, effective immediately. I looked over at Skyla, who was sitting beside my attorney, Josephine Carter, wearing her prettiest purple dress. She looked at me. She didn't cry. She simply nodded, a small, serious nod, like we had made an agreement and she was confirming delivery. Like she finally believed. On the drive home, she was quiet for a long time. Then she asked Grandpa, "Am I your first choice?" I kept my eyes on the road ahead, the houses of Marietta sliding past the window, ordinary and golden in the evening light. "You are my only choice," I said. "You always were." She placed her hand on mine on the gear shift. That was enough. That was everything. If you enjoyed this story, join our community by liking the video and subscribing to hear more real, raw, family-centered stories. Life in Decatur began to move to a very different rhythm. No perfectly trimmed lawns, no strict HOA rules. My house had always been full of books, the smell of old coffee, and memories from decades of cases. But now it also had bright cereal boxes in the pantry and pink hair clips on the bathroom sink. Never underestimate the power of a fresh start, but never forget that the deepest scars are often the ones hidden beneath skin that has already healed. Skyla adjusted to the quiet too quickly. The quiet of someone who has learned to fear taking up too much space in another person's life. One evening, while I was reviewing old case files, she stood in the doorway of my study, clutching the teddy bear Joseph had given her. "Grandpa," she said softly, "do you need me to go to bed early so you can work?" I lowered my glasses and looked into those far too understanding eyes. "No, sweetheart. There is always room for you here." That's when I realized something. Winning custody in court had been the easy part. Winning the trust of a wounded child, that was the real fight. If you believe Stephen and Skyla's journey deserves to be shared, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Small actions like that are the biggest motivation for us to keep telling real stories about family justice. That weekend, Anthony called. He asked if he could take Skyla out for ice cream. His voice over the phone sounded rough, something close to genuine remorse. I stood outside the car and watched from a distance while they sat inside a Dairy Queen. Anthony tried telling jokes. Skyla smiled politely, the same smile she used in Marietta. The kind that says everything is fine until you look a little closer. On the drive back, she was quiet the whole time. Only when we reached the driveway did she speak. Dad asked if I wanted to come visit Alex at home. I turned off the engine and looked at her. "And what did you say?" I told him I needed to finish the word search with you first. She looked at me then, a look so clear no lawyer could ever imitate it. "You'll never forget to order a sweater for me, right?" I reached back and gently ruffled her curls. "I've never even ordered a sweater for myself," I said. "But if I ever did, yours would be the first one delivered." Skyla laughed. A real laugh. Not the broken engine breathing I heard on that night at 2 a.m. I know Anthony and Natalie will need many years to make amends if they truly can. But to me, justice isn't about punishing them. Justice is watching Skyla confidently choose the most expensive toy in the store without checking my face first to see if it's allowed. I'm a 63-year-old family lawyer, and I finally realized that my greatest victory didn't happen inside the Cobb County courtroom. It happened here in this small house where an 8-year-old girl was beginning to believe she was the main character in her own life. Thank you for staying with us through these final chapters. Subscribe so you don't miss the next stories about revenge and compassion. 3 months after the hearing, the house in Decatur had begun to smell like slightly burnt toast and children's shampoo. But in family law, you learn something quickly. The past never really disappears. It just waits in some quiet corner of the mind until the right moment to surface again. Every secret finds a way out, usually when you least expect it, and often through the most ordinary means. One sunny Sunday afternoon, I was sorting through a pile of old belongings Anthony had sent from Marietta, cardboard boxes filled with Skyla's clothes and toys that had clearly been packed in a hurry. At the bottom of the last box, I found an old tablet with a cracked corner on the screen. It was the tablet Anthony had given Skyla for her birthday last year, the one he had called a makeup gift for not having a party. I was about to set it aside. But a lawyer's habits don't allow you to ignore any electronic device without checking it first. I plugged it in and waited for the screen to light up. What I found inside made my blood start boiling all over again. If you're still following this journey, take a second to like the video and subscribe. 97% of viewers forget this step, but your support is what allows us to keep exposing the raw truths behind closed doors. Inside the Photos app was an album titled Disney Memories. It was filled with short videos Alex had recorded. One clip showed the family having dinner at an upscale restaurant inside the park. In the video, Natalie was laughing brightly, hugging Alex while Anthony raised his glass in a toast. Dad Alex's voice said in the video, "I wish Skyla was here. She really likes the ice cream here." The camera turned toward Anthony. His smile froze for a split second, a look I had seen thousands of times on a witness stand. Deflection. She had school buddy, Anthony said flatly. Besides, she would have made everything dramatic. This is our time. She would have made everything dramatic. That word again. The adjective he used to label the pain of an 8-year-old child who had been pushed aside. I turned off the tablet. My hands were shaking with anger, but my mind stayed cold and methodical. Exhibit C. Skyla walked into the room and saw the tablet in my hands. "That's my old one," she said quietly. "I don't use it anymore because it reminds me of the days I had to stay home by myself." I set the tablet down and took a deep breath to keep my voice from breaking. "You don't need to use it anymore, sweetheart. I'm just cleaning up." I stood up, put an arm around her shoulders, and guided her out to the backyard, where Joseph was waiting to teach her how to plant chrysanthemums. That's when I realized something. Even though the court had given me custody, the real battle would be protecting Skyla's heart from the poisonous labels her parents had placed on it. Anthony might have lost the case, but he still didn't understand the price of those words. I went back inside, picked up my phone, and typed a short message to Anthony. "I didn't send the video. I didn't need to. I saw what you said at Disney. Don't ever use the word dramatic to excuse cruelty again. I've practiced family law for 31 years. I know how to make a warning carry the weight of a life sentence. Don't forget to leave a comment with your thoughts about Anthony's actions. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter where real justice will be served." A week after I sent that warning, Anthony showed up at my door without notice. He wasn't wearing his polished suits anymore. He didn't carry the confidence of a successful man from Marietta. He looked worn down like a structure collapsing from the inside. A man can run from the law, but no one can run from the look in their father's eyes when they know they've lost their soul. "Dad," he said, his voice rough. Natalie left. She said she couldn't stand the silence in that house anymore. I leaned against the doorframe and didn't invite him inside. "That silence is what Skyla lived with for years." "Anthony," I said, "it seems like you're only just beginning to taste it." He lowered his head, his shoulders shaking. "I watched those videos again. I didn't realize I sounded that cruel. It's a technique I've used hundreds of times in court. Let the truth reflect itself until the defendant can no longer bear the image staring back at him. Welcome back to Dad's real-life revenge. Grab a snack. Get comfortable and remember, everyone in this story had every opportunity to be kind. They simply chose the wrong path. Leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You're going to like it here. I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me. I didn't want Skyla hearing this conversation. Do you know what the worst part is? I asked, my voice low but sharp as a scalpel. It's not that you left her behind. It's that you taught her her presence was an inconvenience that needed to be planned around. Anthony looked up at me, his eyes full of desperation. How do I fix this, Dad? You can't repair a shattered vase by apologizing to the broken pieces, I said. You have to learn to live with the scars you created. Skyla is happy here. She's starting to believe that she's the priority, not a choice that's too expensive. I looked deeply into my son's eyes, the boy I had once been so proud of. The petition for de facto custody isn't a punishment, Anthony. It's a chance for Skyla to live. And it's a chance for you to learn how to be a father from a distance before you end up ruining Alex too, with that same toxic favoritism. He stood silent for a long moment. Then he asked quietly, "Can I see her?" I glanced through the window into the living room where Skyla was completely absorbed in the new word search puzzle Joseph had given her. She looked peaceful. "Not today," I answered. "Today is the day she found every word in that puzzle without anyone's help. That's a big victory for her. I'm not going to let your regret ruin that moment." Anthony nodded slowly, an acceptance heavy and quiet. He turned and walked back toward his car. His steps weighed down as if he were carrying the entire burden of the 31 years of family law I had witnessed. I went back inside and sat down across from Skyla. "Grandpa," she looked up at me. "Was that Dad?" "Yes, sweetheart," I said, taking her small hand in mine. "Is he mad?" That question again, the constant fear of a wounded child. "No," I said gently with a reassuring smile. "Anthony isn't mad. He's just learning how to become better." Now I added, "Where did you find the word justice?" She pointed proudly to the top left corner of the page and circled it. "I'm Stephen Collins, 63 years old. And I know that even though the trial is over, my real mission is to make sure Skyla never has to ask why again for the rest of her life. If you believe every child deserves to be someone's only choice, press the like button and join our community by subscribing today." Time passed in Decatur, and I began to notice a different kind of defense forming in Skyla. It wasn't that frightening silence anymore. It was something else, an extraordinary effort to be perfect. She cleaned her room as if preparing for a military inspection. She finished everything on her plate, even when she didn't like it, afraid she might become a problem. Everything looked fine until you looked closer. And when you looked closely at Skyla, you saw a child trying to rent love by never causing trouble. I sat at the dining table, watching her carefully fold towels with a level of focus no 8-year-old should need. "Skyla," I said gently, "you know you're allowed to leave a few wrinkles in a towel, right? I'm not going to send you away because a towel isn't folded perfectly." She stopped and looked at me with wide brown eyes. "Mom, Natalie said if I don't take care of things, I'll ruin everything." I pulled out a chair and motioned for her to sit. "In this house," I said softly, "things exist to serve us, not the other way around. And you, Skyla, are more important than every towel in the world put together. Welcome back to Dad's real-life revenge. Grab a snack, get comfortable, and remember, everyone in this story had every chance to be kind. They simply chose the wrong path." I decided it was time for another scene inspection. This time with Natalie. She called me Tuesday evening, her voice dripping with the wounded indignation of someone who believed she was the victim of a legal conspiracy. "Stephen, you've torn this family apart," Natalie sobbed over the phone. "Alex keeps asking why his sister isn't coming home. You did this to punish me, didn't you?" I took a slow breath, feeling the cold steadiness of 31 years of family law settle into my spine. "Natalie," I said calmly, "I didn't do this to punish you. I did it because you treated your daughter like a detachable accessory. You're worried about Alex asking why." I continued, my voice quiet but cutting. "But did you ever stop to ask how Skyla felt sitting alone in that dark house in Marietta, staring at a wall full of pictures of Alex?" "That was just an oversight," she shouted. "An oversight that lasted 3 years across 4 trips and 11 photographs," I replied, my voice low and unyielding. "In my profession, we don't call that an oversight. We call it systematic neglect." I hung up. I didn't want to hear another word of justification. When I walked back into the living room, Skyla was standing there, still holding the half-folded towel. She had heard everything. "Does Mom hate me, Grandpa?" I knelt down so my eyes were level with hers. Your mom doesn't hate you, Skyla, I said gently. But she's sick with something people call selfishness. And my job is to make sure you don't catch the pain that comes with it. I took the towel from her hands, crumpled it into a ball, and tossed it lightly into the corner of the room. Skyla stared wide-eyed. Then a shy smile appeared. See, I said. The world didn't fall apart. And I'm still right here. I'm Stephen Collins, and I realized something important. Real revenge isn't making Anthony and Natalie suffer. Real revenge is erasing every trace of their damage from the confidence slowly growing inside Skyla. Every wrinkled towel, every burnt batch of scrambled eggs, every laugh that fills this house. Each one is a legal victory no courtroom petition could ever match. Press like if you believe truth, and love will always outlast forced smiles. Time is a fair judge, but sometimes it's a cruel one too. 6 months after custody was finalized, Anthony sent me a package. Inside wasn't legal paperwork. It was a new photo album, the expensive leather kind he used to keep his perfect moments. No matter how much expensive leather you wrap around something, rot on the inside eventually finds a way to leak out. I opened the album on my desk, the same desk where my small digital recorder still sat, a quiet reminder of that night in Marietta. The first page held a short handwritten note. I reprinted everything. I understand now, Dad. I turned the pages. Anthony had hired a professional photographer to restore and edit photos, adding Skyla into moments she had been excluded from, or recreating scenes where she stood at the center. He was trying to repair the past with Photoshop and polished frames. Welcome back to Dad's real-life revenge. Grab a snack, sit back, and remember, everyone in this story had the chance to be kind. They simply chose the wrong path. I called Skyla into the room. She looked at the album, her small fingers tracing the pictures where she stood in the center, wearing a matching red sweater with the rest of the family in a staged Christmas scene. She looked at the album for a long moment, then gently closed it. Grandpa, she said, her voice strangely calm. I don't need these pictures. Why not, sweetheart? Because I wasn't really there, Skyla said, looking straight into my eyes. I like the picture you took of me on your phone when we went to Rosie's Diner better. In that one I'm really smiling. If you've made it this far, do us a small favor, subscribe to the channel. Many people watch without ever doing that, and while it costs you nothing, it means everything to us. Truly, thank you. That's when I realized something. Anthony was still trying to save his image, but Skyla had already moved far beyond needing approval from people who once treated her like an inconvenience. I put the album away in the bottom drawer, the same place where I once kept the recorder. I practiced family law for 31 years, and I know that the most convincing evidence isn't printed on glossy paper. It's when a child no longer feels like they have to earn love. Justice isn't edited photographs. Justice is Skyla knowing that even without the red sweater, she is my entire world. Press like if you agree that real memories matter more than perfect-looking frames. The late afternoon sunlight stretched across the wooden floors of the house in Decatur, painting everything in warm gold. Today marks exactly 1 year since that 2 a.m. phone call turned my life upside down. In 31 years of family law, I've closed thousands of case files. But the one labeled Skyla Hall is the only file I will keep on my desk forever. Some cases you win for money. Some cases you win to save your own soul. Skyla is outside in the yard helping Joseph repair the wooden fence. She's no longer the timid child with the shaky, broken engine breathing. Now her laughter rings out bright and confident. I stand at the window watching, turning the dead recorder in my hand. A piece of evidence from a past we survived together. Welcome back to Dad's real-life revenge grab. A snack, sit back, and remember, everyone in this story had every chance to be kind. They just chose the wrong path. Leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You're going to love it here. The message I want to leave you with after everything that happened is simple. Children are not mirrors for their parents' self-esteem. They are not pieces in financial plans, and they are not props for social media photos. Every child carries an invisible recorder in their heart, one that remembers every moment of neglect, every excuse, and every time they were placed behind something else, a Disney trip, a red sweater, or someone else's priority. My advice to every parent is this: never let your child wonder, why not me? Favoritism inside a family is a quiet poison. It turns perfect-looking homes into psychological prisons. Remember this. A simple birthday cake shared with real love is worth more than the most luxurious vacation that leaves one chair empty. If you enjoyed this story, join our community by liking and subscribing to hear more real raw stories about families. Skyla runs into the house sweaty from playing outside, but with bright shining eyes. She grabs my hand, those small hands that no longer tremble. "Grandpa," she asks, "are you busy with court tomorrow?" I bend down and kiss her gently on the forehead. "Tomorrow," I say, "I'm only busy being your grandpa. My name is Stephen Collins. I'm 63 years old. I spent my life fighting for justice in courtrooms, but I truly found it the day Skyla understood she would never again be someone's second choice. You are my only choice," I tell her. "You always have been."